I think there's something special about choosing a field that you're interested in at a young age and pursuing that with your heart and going through the internal struggle and the external struggle to figure out exactly where your place is when it comes to a certain industry or passion. My guest here is no exception when it comes to this philosophy. Today on A Word Before We Leave, we have Ishan Parikh. Ishan Parikh is an old high school friend of mine. We had both made movies together in high school, 2 feature-length ones that some might say aren't necessarily spectacular in any sense, but we made them. It was a place to start. So this is going to be a little reminiscent for me, and just to warn you as the listener, the audio recorded is on 2 different locations because Ishan's currently in Georgia. I'm currently in Lincoln, and so we had to record through Zoom. I also had Ishan give me his audio from his phone, and he recorded on his end. So without a further ado, this is A Word Before We Leave. Welcome to A Word Before We Leave. I'm Brett Gaffney. On today's episode, I'm here with Ishan Parikh. Ishan is from Overland Park, Kansas, graduated from KU in 2020, majoring in film and media studies, and is currently finishing his graduate degree at Savannah College of Art and Design. Ishan is also releasing a new short film titled Cydney, starring South Dakota native Mia Hilt. Ishan's plans for the future is to travel the world, discover new places, and to be a working filmmaker. Ishan, welcome to the episode, and thanks for joining us. To start us off, I think we're going to jump right into Word of the Day. The basic premise for Word of the Day, I'm going to give you the word and the definition, and all we have to do is to make our own sentence with the word so that we can find ways to implement this into our daily lives for not just us, but also the listener. So today's Word of the Day is brought to you by dictionary.com, not sponsored, and the word is circumambulate. And the definition
circumambulate.
Yeah, circumambulate. So
that is a unique word I've never heard ever.
It's a big one. The definition is it's a verb. It's to walk or go about or around, especially ceremoniously. The origin of circumambulate, to walk around, is a compound of 2 Latin origin stems, circum, around, and ambule, to walk. As we learned from the recent Word of the Day's circadian and the circumstellar, circumstellar comes from the Latin circus, circle, which is the source of English terms such as circa, circular, and circumference. The stem ambule comes from the Latin ambulare, which is to walk, which gives rise to English amble, ambulance, and funambulist, or a tightrope walker. Do you want me to spell it, or you think you can think of a sentence with circumambulate?
Is it CIRCUMABULATE? Did I get that right?
You were close. You're off by 1 letter. It's a CIRCUMAMBULATE.
Okay, circumambulate.
Ambulate, yeah. And the provided example sentence from dictionary.com, not sponsored, is, I'm proud to say I did circumambulate the gigantic 3-century-old Zamana tree with branches that span the equivalent of a city block. It's a tropical tree of life.
What a creative way to start off the show, Brett. That's a sentence with circumambulate. So you said the basic definition is to walk around, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. Especially ceremoniously. They put emphasis on that.
Ceremoniously. So like that's a routine kind of system. I mean, I guess they say, walking in general is good. People always want to get their steps in. So I guess get up in the morning and circumambulate, folks.
And my sentence will be, after the victory of defeating all the Trojan warriors during the Trojan War. Wait, no, I'm changing my sentence immediately because I don't want to say something incorrect.
That just sounds like something you would write in social studies class in
it does
middle school, like when they ask for complete sentences.
Yeah. I was going to circumambulate after our victory winning the recent soccer game, but then I realized that we lost by 1 point. That's my sentence.
I guess I could work it into Harry Potter some way, like after the Wizarding War ended, like after the Battle of Hogwarts ended, Harry and his friends circumambulated around the castle grounds. If that's a lot better than what I said. So Ishan, you get bonus points for doing 2 sentences with it takes you right back into school when they ask for feels like it would be on one of those fill in the blanks in English whenever you're doing the grammar part or vocab. Yeah, it'd be a vocab word. There you go.
Yeah, it'd definitely be a vocab word where you have to like kind of plan out what words are not similar enough to the sentence that's already provided. You have to fill in the blank.
Yeah, or it's like it'd be on a test, like the amount of vocab tests we took in school. And I say that because Brett and I went to, high school together. So he knows, he gets gets the jig.
So now that we've done the word of the day, I think it's perfect time now that you're all warmed up to start going into the questions. So if you're ready, I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready, man.
All right. So Ishan, what is one thing that you would claim to be your passion? And I think I know the answer to this, but I'd like for you to tell the listener.
Do you want to take a shot at the board if you want to tell the folks?
My guess is Ishan's answer is that he's passionate about movies, making movies specifically.
Bingo. Well, he got it. Yeah. I guess if you were to boil down like to the one thing that has kind of kept me going throughout the latter half of my teens and just kind of getting into my early 20s now, it's been movies. Yeah. I'm a cinephile. I am constantly I make movies, I watch movies, so it's kind of I'm very well doven into that the just kind of the world of cinema at this point.
So if you were to maybe describe when you were a kid, at what age did you know that movies were something that caught your attention, something that you might possibly want to do?
There was no like one aha moment. It was just kind of, I was very interested in just storytelling in general. I mean, obviously, like, the one that you point to immediately is like, growing up or when you're younger, Star Wars being like a really big touchstone, Harry Potter being a really big touchstone. And so just kind of becoming really quickly obsessed with these stories that go beyond, what we know and can kind of take you into worlds that, we can only imagine of. And so, as a kid, I was, just completely taken by all those things, set creativity. And so, movies were, I loved going to watch movies always. And I think at a certain point, probably around like age 7, 8, 9, like around that time, it occurred to me like, okay, well, there's people that clearly, do a lot of work to make this happen, and there's clearly somebody, pulling together the entire process to and then I found out like what a movie director is. And you hear about like, Steven Spielberg. I think I did like a book report on him when I was like, or like a biography project, where you had to pick somebody. So I did Steven Spielberg. And so I think that was probably like the germ of it. And then I remember when I was 10 years old, I went to see Inception on opening day, like a 11 a.m. IMAX show. And I just remember walking out of that movie going like, I have no idea what I just saw, but it was cool, and obviously at 10 years old, you're not going to understand Inception. It's taken me many years and watching that film. It's my favorite movie of all time to this day. And so that's kind of when it dawned on me that, this would be a really cool job. And I never really took it seriously. I think at some point I wanted to be like an author. I tried writing like books and stuff like that when I was probably like 11 or 12, and that didn't work out. And then I became very interested in like television and writing television, watching shows like Lost and Breaking Bad. I probably watched Breaking Bad when I was like probably a little too young for it, but I think it was a mixture of a lot of those stories that really spoke to me, and kind of obviously film became the most prevalent one just because it was the one. I mean, now getting older, I have a better understanding of why it is the way it is, but movies are the one nexus, I would say, where it all like intersects. You have writing, music, acting, and all these like dance and all these like different forms of art can really come together through the screen. So
So how would you compare filmmaking to other forms of art? You touched on how it seems like it's a bit more of a collaboration, right? Me being an actor and a podcaster, I understand that there's a lot of different facets that go into filmmaking. So how would you describe that to someone that may have never made a movie or been on set or doesn't have much of a clue on like what goes behind the scenes in writing, planning, making a movie, shooting, editing, so on?
I mean, from a director's standpoint, it's the weirdest job throughout the whole process, because a lot of times, like, you're not doing anything except telling people what to do, and that's all it is. It's just decision making. But like, I would say, if for somebody who's never ever made a movie before, you know, the most important thing that you have to figure out is, what story do you want to tell? What story do you want to tell? In what world does it take place? And what, you know, keyword genre has become really important to me over the years, because there's so many different kinds. And the process by which you make a movie is you just said it, is that you're collaborating with different people to make it come to life, you know, because the funny part about filmmaking is it's make believe. You know, you are essentially playing with action figures, but those action figures are real life people. And it's telling a story on screen that enlightens, excites, and entertains people. Those are kind of the three key words that I have always kind of looked to whenever you're trying to come up with that story, you know. And so that process it's in three different portions, you know, the writing, or the pre-production, production, post-production, and each time you're making the movie over and over and over again. And as a director, you have the unique, I would say, blessing and curse of growing with that story over the three different phases. And so I feel like that's kind of in a nutshell, like, that's what filmmaking is that you're pulling together different ways of creating, whether it's through color, whether it's through performance, whether it's through, you know, words and all of that. And you're kind of like putting it into a melting pot. And then what's on the screen is that alchemy that happens.
What would you say is the hardest part about making a movie?
I mean, it's all hard, really. I feel like, I mean, the hardest part, I feel like, is, I mean, I've always found shooting stressful. I've always found it the hardest part. I've come to like it a little bit more over the years, but I've always dreaded like going, because like, it's one of those things where it's like, you have to adapt to the vision as it's happening in front of you. You know, you've got to very early on separate yourself, especially if somebody like, you know, like, I write all my own stuff. I direct all my own stuff. So it's like that thing of, you have what's in your head, but then what's 9 times out of 10, unless you're just like a genius, which I have not met one, you know, it's never going to come out the way you think it's going to, or the way you have always imagined it. So at the end, you get something. It's that alchemy that happens, and I feel like it's cool to experience, but it's also hard because, you know, as a director, you have to gauge that vision as it's you know, progressing, and I find that, you know, a lot of times it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of planning. It's a lot of improv, and you have to mix all those things together. And, you know, the scariest part, the hardest part, is not knowing what's going to come out at the other end. So I feel like it's probably what I found is like the hardest. I know what you think is the hardest.
I personally, I find the hardest part about making movies is trying to understand what the director wants in the scene that we're recording, because I'm on the other side, right? Like, you're behind the camera, I'm in front of the camera, and let's say director X makes actor Y want to do said thing in his head, but then it doesn't go as planned. I think the hard part as the actor is making the director happy, in a sense, like keeping the director maybe not happy, but like satisfied with the work that they're presenting. Because at the end of the day, like, when you're on set, sure, you can think about character motivation and objective, and I can go into hours upon hours about like what it takes to like build a human being out of a script. But when you're there on set, a lot of it is like, sometimes you have to throw some of that out of the door, and you just have to work with what the director is giving you, because you might plan for this scene to go one way, and then all of a sudden the director says one sentence that changes your mind as an actor, and you're like, oh, well, all that prep work was nice, but
I've had like numerous like a lot of my colleagues would probably just like want to throw things at me when I say this, but I think really like film acting it's harder than theater, I feel like, because I think you as an artist, as an actor, as an artist, when you're going to make a movie, I feel like you're selling yourself over to a process that is not completely yours. Like what you just said, you might have all this prep that you've done. And I know people say prepare, and then you get on the day of and then just throw it all out the door. That happens in stage too. But you've got this person who in the back of your mind is going to go to the next stage of the process and manipulate everything that you've done on the day of. And I feel like that as an actor or as just a performer can really, I don't know what the right word to say here, but it can really temper with your process as bringing that character, building it from the page and what you feel it should be. But then you get, notes on the day of and you have to adjust. And then all of a sudden in the mind, you're going like, I don't know if this is what I wanted, but I'm just going to do it anyway. Or you do something that you feel really good about, but then like the director goes to the editing room, the actor doesn't. And they can really pick and choose from different takes and whatnot and really build something
that's my favorite part. Sorry to interrupt, but that's one of my favorite parts about like seeing the final product is like seeing what takes they chose. I think the best part about film acting as an actor is the freedom to do something different every time. Like you hear stories about John Travolta delivering a line differently every single take for Pulp Fiction, and then they just take like certain cuts of him based on different shots, different scenes that they've done, and then they'll just splice it in. So like you do the diner scene maybe 5 to 6 times, and they take a sentence that John Travolta says from each different take.
Have you heard about the thing that Fincher does? He will literally mix different take, like within the same frame. He will, I guess there's some technology now that allows you to blend different takes together. And what you're seeing is one frame, but 3 different takes could have gone on. Again, that's because he does so many takes, is that it allows you to do essentially a lot of different things within the same frame. So I've always found it really interesting how, that process of manipulation happens. Obviously, I feel like on stage, the actor is more in control. You don't like, I could be wrong. I've never done stage acting. Well, I mean, I think film acting it's just as truthful. It can be very raw, I just think it must feel a little insecure as an actor, to know that the process is not completely yours. But then again, when you're making a movie, everybody at the end of the day is selling themselves over to a larger vision at hand. That's controlling them. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay. I was wondering, Ishan, what is your favorite memory on set? You've worked on a lot of short films in the past. You've worked on a few feature-length films through your undergrad and through high school. I was a part of 2 of them in high school. So my guess is you have a lot of good memories on set. I'm guessing you also have a lot of bad memories. I'll give you the option. You can choose a good memory or a bad memory, but only one.
I mean, there have been so many. I feel like I think one of the one probably I'll always cherish the most is we were shooting a scene from Rainbow Boulevard, and I think it was the very last scene, and I had written that scene a year before, and it was. I think what just brought me so much joy is that it turned out exactly that I wanted to. And again, it goes to the thing of like, you have to grow with the vision. And, 1 year later, me probably didn't read that scene the same way, but it was so satisfying to get to that, like to be on that day. And it was just overall really satisfying. I remember everything clicked. Like you have those moments where like the acting, the camera work, the lighting, the location, everything just clicks, everything just comes together. And so I've always cherished that day the most. And obviously when we were doing, I think we were doing Deranged, which was our first movie that we did. that Brett and I made in our sophomore year of high school. And I remember on the day of, it might have been, it was a night we went to like Prairie Fire. And this was probably like in the 4th or 5th day of shooting. And up until here, like we had no idea what the hell we were doing. God only knew if any of this was ever really going to like actually work. For all we knew, like we were going to do this for like maybe 2 weeks. And then like we were going to be like, okay, yeah, this was fun and all. But, and I remember we did a shot where we went with the phone. I was the one who took that shot. We went around your shoulder and onto your face as you were walking. And I remember going home and watching that and just going like, oh my God, like we're making a movie. And I know it was a very like, less mature version of us when we were first kind of starting out making movies and stuff like that. And it was just fun. And I cherish that because it for some reason, like I walked away from that night going like, I believe in myself and like you have the conviction, I feel like a lot of the key thing to have as a filmmaker, as a creative, is that you have to have conviction. Like if you're convinced yourself that you can do this, then you can do it. And if you don't have it, then chances are, you're just going to look negatively at whatever you're doing. And it's the thing is like, you have to believe. And so I would say like, those are probably like the 2 days but like there's been so many, I feel like over all the films, especially as they've gotten bigger and bigger and as, more, I'm working with more and more people on them and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. I forgot about that day at Prairie Fire. That was a good day. I remember working on Deranged, and a lot of it was like, okay, so Ishan and I wrote this 90-page, 100-page movie, and we're going to film it on our iPhones, and we're going to see what happens.
As one does.
Yeah. Because that's all, that's all you got when you're 15 is you have a phone. And I remember that year for Christmas, I asked for like microphones that are compatible with the iPhone. I was asking for like different like lenses you could put over the like stock camera lens that came with the iPhone. And I get like a fisheye lens or like a micro lens or a macro lens. And I'd be like, oh, these are trash. I don't want to use these at all. And we just made the most out of what we had. And I think like starting, if you want to do something, you got to start right then and there. And that was kind of like what I told you in class when you were like, oh yeah, I want to make a movie. And so I was like, well then do it. Like what's stopping you?
And that's the thing is like, people ask, how do you make a movie? How do you get started? And the truth is like, there's no right or wrong way to do it. I mean, the only wrong way to do it is to not do it at all. And I feel like if you're out there doing it and you keep doing it, like we did, and then the next year we made another movie, which was longer, more ambitious, but we took what we learned from the first one and essentially applied it to, the second go around and we got better. And ever since then, I feel like every film teaches me something new. Every film it's important to me that they're different experiences, each one, and to have that variety. And I feel like you're able to acquire your skills through that. And I think, at a young age, like if you're able to just jump off the deep end like that, or just throw yourself off, it's the thing about, when you learn you either sink or swim. And if everybody wants to learn to swim, they can swim and they'll float. And I feel like that's the same thing with filmmaking, is that, the more you do it. And that's the thing about, is that nobody's going to be there to tell you no. You just have to keep finding your collaborators, finding that like family of yours and keep doing it. You said best day. I remember I actually one of the coolest was like, it was the very last day we were doing Deranged, I remember. And right as we finished that big storm, and it's in the movie, actually, it's where the clouds came together. And I just remember like, wow, like here's the magic of it. And we were like, go, 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 go. And we were, I think that was the one where she like walks away at the end.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. So now I'm going to transition into a segment. This is a new segment to A Word Before We Leave. So as a listener, thanks for listening to episode 3. I'm glad you guys are here. This new segment is called, what did I call it? Oh, this new segment is called What's the Word? I'm going to give Ishan a news article unrelated to the podcast to kind of throw him on his toes. And Ishan is going to simply provide commentary after I read the news article to him, see what his thoughts are. Ishan, you think you can do that? Okay,
Yeah,
so
I've got opinions, right? I've got opinions.
this is from AP News. This was posted yesterday. A blind older dog found in Alaska 3 weeks after wandering off. Sitka, Alaska, AP. An Alaska family had given up hope of finding their blind elderly golden retriever who wandered away from home 3 weeks ago, but a construction crew found Lulu in salmonberry bushes after initially confusing her for a bear. Lulu was barely alive after being found Tuesday, but she is being nursed back to health and is back home with her family. The Daily Sitka Sentinel, the Daily Sitka Sentinel, the Daily Sitka Sentinel, I can't even say that word. The Daily Sitka Sentinel reported. She means everything, owner Ted Kabaki said. I have 5 daughters and they're 4 to 13 years old, so they spent every day of their life with that dog. The Kabaki family searched for weeks after Lulu wandered off on June 18th. She's just so helpless, and you kind of imagine that she can't really get far because she can't see, he said. It didn't help when the family was subject to a terrible joke when someone claimed that when they found Lulu a few days into the search, we put the kids to bed and got a text saying, we found your dog, or I have found your dog. And we're like, oh my God, this is incredible, he said. Then the person texted me saying, just kidding, this happened. Yeah, that was all just part of this terrible story. After searching for weeks, the family had given up hope. But then a construction crew this week spotted Lulu lying in the brush alongside the Kabaki's home in a bush. They got the dog back. And that's the end of the article. Quick one. What's your thoughts on this blind dog wandering away in Alaska?
I mean, I've never been to Alaska, but I feel like I'm grateful that they found the dog and, you know, it came back to the family.
I'm curious how you let a blind dog wander off, but also, you know, I'm guessing they just let it out to potty and it walked away being a blind golden retriever and just couldn't find its way back.
I feel like there's a lack of responsibility there, you know, letting a blind dog out, but I feel like it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, how could this happen? But when it happens, you just have to put that aside and focus on, you know, getting the dog back.
I wonder. So my guess is that this dog was probably living off of like berries and stuff and like maybe a small animal here and there, whatever it could catch, but it's probably just eating whatever it could. It was gone for 3 weeks.
You don't think they have poisonous berries in Alaska, do you?
Well, I mean, the dog's alive. They probably do. I mean, if there's poisonous berries in Kansas and Nebraska, there's poisonous berries in Alaska.
There's poisonous berries everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's great that they found them.
Yeah. Okay. Now that the segment is over, we're going to transition into some of the more personal questions. Let's just say I've buttered you up for these questions based on talking to you for the past like 30 minutes or so.
That was only the beginning.
Yeah. Now comes the big stuff. What is something you wish somebody told you when you were younger that you know now?
Slow down, be patient. You're only like, you're young. I spent a lot of like when I was younger, like I mean, you know this. I always like it's that weird thing where it's like when you're younger, you always want to be older. And then when you do get older, you're like, man, I just wish I was like 13, 14 again, you know, where you had nothing to worry about. Because time goes by slower when we're younger. It's only like when we get older, I feel like that, you know, because you have more things to worry about, you have more stress on you and stuff like that. And you just need to like get by life. Time speeds up. So I feel like I feel like I could go back. I wish I could go back and tell my younger self to be patient and to hang in there.
Who is somebody that you admire or look up to, and why?
Easy answer is my grandfather. Just because he's, I feel like the most like coolest Zen, wise, and like hardworking person there is. He's like almost in his 80s now, and he's still a working doctor or working oncologist. He's not practicing, but he works at a VA hospital. And so just like to be at an age like that and still operate, I feel like is admirable. I mean, my hero in film is Christopher Nolan. Just to, you know, you look at that career and you go like, you know, wow, somebody who stuck to his guns, didn't compromise. And he's, you know, you're in that position where you get to entertain audiences on your own terms. And so that's a hard question. I feel like it just changes every few years. Like, who do you admire? Who do you look up to?
Is there anybody that you constantly go back to? Maybe you're looking at their work or you're looking at their mentality of life or the way they approach just the day to day, maybe in your daily life, that you're just like, wow, like this is somebody that is admirable?
Yeah, I mean, I worked at the Boys and Girls Club for 2 years in my first 2 years of college, almost three, yeah. And my manager there, my boss there, was pretty inspirational. I feel like he had this mentality of, of being yourself, being confident, being comfortable with yourself. Because spoiler alert, in my late teens, I wasn't I was probably the most insecure I've ever been. And, to be in a job where you're working with kids who obviously they bring out a different side in you, whether you like it or not, being around kids. And to have somebody like Anthony that I could, just observe in daily life, and somebody who's made mistakes in his life, is very aware of it, and now has dedicated his life to education. And I mean, I don't plan on working in education, but I feel like there's something admirable about having that kind of mentality. And he was always just full of positivity. He had this saying called PVO, positive vibes only. He'd always type that into our work chat. And so that always brought a smile to my face. But yeah, you always look for those people in life that you that make you want to show up to work, or that you see on the daily, pretty much. And so yeah, I'd probably as far as my daily life went, that was probably somebody I looked up to. Do you have or does it change for you, or do you have that one set person?
See, normally I don't get asked questions by my guests, so this is throwing me for a loop right now, but I'm more than welcome to answer them.
You're in the hot seat now, Brett.
Yeah, I do. It is a hard question. I've always looked up to my dad. He fought for our family. He was the kind of my parents got divorced when I was at a young age, around 8, but I never saw him give up on himself or on my siblings or I. And he constantly, and my mom too. I mean, they both have fought their own battles, and I love them and respect them for who they are. And I feel like I took their affection and their hard work as a form of, I felt like I was ignored as a kid because of that. But looking back, I realize now, the older you got, I was I didn't care back then. And now I look back, I'm like, okay, I did care. I just pretended that I didn't care. And now it's I understand why they were absent at times. It's because they were trying to keep two roofs over me and my siblings' heads. And as a kid, you don't think about that. You think about, oh, who am I going to play with today? What does school look like tomorrow? You're not thinking about the grand scheme of all right, my parents have a 401k they're both trying to save for. They're both living and providing for a whole family, not just themselves. And now you get to the point where you're about 20, and now I am providing for just myself. And it's, it's I could not raise a kid right now, but I want to get to that point where I could work hard enough and provide for other people. And I think that's just the hard work that I learned from my parents is something that stuck with me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think hard work is something when you're younger you don't acknowledge, because you're not that person doing it. I mean, now you and I are in our 20s, and we're going into an industry where you have to work your butt off. Otherwise, you will not survive. And so that's, I mean, seeing my grandfather, he came from a small village in India all the way to New York City to become a working oncologist, and he had 5 kids. My mom being the oldest of them, and bringing over and he was in his 20s when that happened, 20s, early 30s probably, and bringing a whole family over, migrating them, getting them taken care of, and through the years he remained working. He experienced the loss of his 2 children. Or two out of the 5 of his children. And then you just that kind of loss is unfathomable to somebody like me who is younger. But now, the older I get, the more you acknowledge going my God, and he also fought lymphoma during all of that as well. And throughout all of it, he maintained such a strength. And he maintained a sensibility of and a mantra sort of that, we must go forward in life. no matter the circumstances, no matter the losses, no matter how much life brings you down to your knees, you rise back up, and keep going along. So, it's funny how age, time, and everything, evolves us, and certain things we don't understand at one point in our life, we do just with time and with experience.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Ishan, are you ready for the final question?
It's just one word.
Now, I asked everybody this. This is the premise of the podcast, as the listener knows. Would you care to share a word before we leave? You can say a sentence. You can say a paragraph. You can direct this towards the audience. You can direct this towards yourself, a future version of yourself. Really, it's open-ended for a reason.
I'm gonna go for a cheesy one. I'm gonna steal a line from this movie, never sell yourself short, which it's kind of the backbone of the movie. And it's something that somebody once told me about 2 or 3 years ago. And I have somewhat, for the most part, abided by that. I don't know if it was a piece of advice. It was more just like, somebody texting me something really nice, really kind, and saying, never sell yourself short. So it's probably what I would leave your listeners with.
Well, everybody, you heard it here first. Ishan Parikh, don't sell yourself short. Well, Ishan, I want to thank you today for joining us. I'm going to say a quick special thanks to the listener, to Matthew Gaffney, Ashley Gaffney, Rick Alloway, Kelly Bowling, Parker Ryle, Ishan Parikh, Morgan McCoy, and to anyone else out there that is listening to A Word Before We Leave. Maybe you too could write a story of your own today and possibly make it into a movie if you're feeling adventurous. Because, we only have so much time, so you might as well act now. Because if it's what you want to do, then go ahead and do it. Yep, own your story. This has been Brett Gaffney and
Ishan Parikh.
And this has been A Word Before We Leave. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Brett.
Of course. How do I end the recording on the button?
I feel like it's just going to record until you end.
Can I just hit stop recording? So there's a thing that I do for my outro for all the podcasts, and that's like, we got to get up and leave and then close the door, because the door closing is like the end of the podcast. Does that make sense? But I'm going to like slowly fade out our talking right now. So I can't go to my door because I soundproofed it. So I need you to get up and like close the door.